Ito puts all the people who misbehave center stage.
A man searches for the person in a picture on the wall in a Tokyo dojo around 1950. When he shows there, the students scowl, but Chanook reassures them by asking who he is and if he knows his father. James Wright presents himself as a Royal Air Force squadron commander who was with Chanook's father during the Bataan War. Chanook remembers his father telling him about a Western fighter who acquired banned combat tactics and became an expert in Eastern martial arts. Chanook chooses to resolve an old grievance when he sees James present. James has extraordinary skill and easily defeats all 8 of the kids as they attack one by one. Chanook breaks up the altercation and queries James's presence. He had brought recollections of his time in captivity and the conflicts that shaped him. This is a war prisoner. The story takes place in the Philippines' Bataan Peninsula 8 years ago. After a bloody 3-month conflict, Japan is attempting to seize the final Allied foothold in Southeast Asia. James' plane was shot down by an enemy aircraft, leaving him stranded. He fights by himself in the forest as the sole survivor of the operation. Japanese troops look for any British airmen who may still be alive in the woodland. James kills the soldiers precisely by setting up ambushes and traps. An explosion is caused when one soldier is flung against a concealed bomb. James's whereabouts is revealed by the explosion. Soldiers surround him as he flees. He is told to down his knife and kneel by Corporal Hano. With a sudden change of heart, Hano orders his men to take James to their headquarters after drawing his pistol. They take James to Lieutenant Colonel Ito's Japanese military camp. Ito instructs Hirano to do the execution in front of the American soldiers who have been captured when he inquires as to whether James is the only survivor and is met with silence. Hirano gives James the order to kneel at the location while 2 guards keep watch. While James braces himself for a counterattack, Hirano draws his katana and prepares to strike. James swiftly killed 3 men while his hands were bound. He escaped into the woods and discovered an airplane crash close to the military camp. He rushed again because Japanese forces were already there, but he fell into a net trap. He was unable to flee. In order to confront Lieutenant Colonel Ito, who was drafting a report for headquarters, soldiers pulled him back to the camp. Ito questioned Endo about why Hirano had failed and why James was still alive. Endo clarified that before falling into their trap, James had murdered Hano and 2 of his men. Ito became enraged. Since their earliest days in the service, he had regarded Hano as a brother. He still decided not to take action that day. Promising a brutal end the following morning, he advised James to have a good night's sleep. James met other prisoners in the jail barracks that evening. Beardy asked how James got there after introducing himself. James claimed that he and 9 of his friends had been transported to the South China Sea aboard a banana boat to assist in the last defense of the Allies. When enemy fire struck his plane at midnight, causing it to fall into the lake, their mission became a suicide run. First Sergeant Gabriel of the U.S. Army described the severe labor required by the Japanese soldiers as well as the camp regulations. According to him, Captain Collins, their top prisoner, remained in a different barracks and would meet James the following day. James replied that since he had slain Ito's most trusted guy, he might not be able to live tomorrow. The following morning, Ito saw his warriors practice martial arts. James was soon standing in the battle arena, ready to be put to death. Hiroshi came closer, pulled out his katana, and instead of hitting James' hands, he cut the rope that bound them. After breaking camp regulations, 3 inmates were thrown into a death-defying combat in the arena. The camp's strongest warrior, Kuji, went in to murder them. He was very skilled and easily got rid of the 3 inmates. James was told to take on Kuji next. His advantage was obvious due to his hidden strength. He killed Kuji instantaneously with a single punch and kick. When Ito saw that James' technique was above and beyond training, he became enraged at Kuji's murder. He swore to see James dead shortly after telling Endo that he had used illegal techniques. Captain Collins greeted James as an ally after they met. Beard's homemade booze was shared with him when Collins invited him to the barracks. Collins inquired about James' training in martial arts and his background. James clarified that although his father was employed in a textile industry in Hong Kong, he was born in England and grew up there. He returned to England after his father passed away, but he kept up his training in Japan, Thailand, and Hong Kong. Endo soon came in and brought James to Ito, who was being treated by a prisoner named Teresa. Ito called Japanese martial arts prohibited and asked James about his proficiency in them. James did not provide any information, but he appeared to know who had trained him. Ito thought about giving back a precious metal necklace that belonged to James, but he decided to keep it since James would pass away the following day. James was ready for what lay ahead the following day. 3 Japanese soldiers were waiting to engage in combat when he left the barracks and entered the arena. He easily vanquished them with his precise movements. Ito watched in increasing rage. The men were left alive by Jamshad. In order to punish their failure, Ito ordered their execution. Gabriel clarified that all inmates would be transferred to a different camp in a week after returning to the barracks. It would be worse at the new camp. They had to get away or risk dying slowly. They needed a radio in order to call for assistance. On top of a tower stood the lone working set. To get James to it, everyone decided to set up a distraction. They created a disturbance in the fort of the sack. James had a clear route to the tower as the guards hurried inside. Unnoticed, he went up and grabbed the radio. Teresa spotted James getting ready to go. Because she likewise wanted to go away, she remained silent. Beardy questioned James about the risk that evening. They would be exposed if they used the radio. James acknowledged the risk, but he claimed they had no other option. Since he was the only one who could understand Japanese, he requested Beardy to record anything the Japanese soldier said, even if it was just in bits. Ito stormed into the barracks the following day. The camp had been abandoned. He gestured to each inmate until 2 of them acknowledged that they were the ones who started the commotion. He gave the order to execute them right away. James recognized a chance. Where had those men gotten past the guards, he wondered. Jones first objected, but after being questioned repeatedly, he gave in and disclosed the location. James explained his strategy that evening. He snuck by the guards by disguising his bed to conceal his absence. On patrol, Hiroshi looked over the barracks. At James's bed, he hesitated, felt uneasy, but remained silent. Outside, James hurried toward the coast through the woodland. Using the radio, he was able to receive instructions in the American military's Navajo language. Uncertain of the message, he paused and turned to leave. Quietly looked for any signs of assistance on the destroyed jet before heading back to the barracks. Then quietly sneaked inside to avoid being discovered. James reported what he had witnessed at the bay the previous evening to Gabriel and Collins the next morning. Details were difficult to see due to the darkness, but he thought American forces were coming since he could hear Navajo voices. He recognized the language even though he didn't understand the words. He also talked about how they found a glider close to the hills and intended to use it to escape. Because the glider lacked a motor, Collins questioned the concept. James clarified that all that was needed for a pass was for the pilot to fly low and tie a tow line. The glider would take off if the pilot came in straight and there was 50 yards of clear space in front of it. Soldiers showed up shortly after to take James to Ito. Ito inquired as to whether James or any of his fellow soldiers were able to communicate in Navajo. James denied any awareness despite being aware of the danger. He went on to say that no American would teach him the language and that only Native Americans spoke it. Unconvinced, Ito gave his men the order to remove James so he might face more severe punishment. Endo then requested authorization to murder James directly. Ito declined. He felt a greater danger. American troops were approaching the island. And now that James is here, the British may follow. Despite his inability to comprehend the Navajo phrases, Ito had a gut feeling that something was about to happen. Ito set an example by punishing James in front of the assembled convicts. Soldiers thrashed James with rotten sticks while his hands were bound. One soldier persisted in hitting him after the restraints were taken off. James became enraged and retaliated against 3 troops. Endo knocked him down after striking him in the face with a rifle and waited for orders. Nothing was said by Ito. Rather, he entered the arena and started shooting at a number of inmates. James regained consciousness 2 days later. He was at a medical facility that is often used by Japanese soldiers. A prisoner named Teresa, who had been imprisoned for 3 months, revealed that he had been taken there by Ito's men. James inquired about the camp's conditions. However, Japanese soldiers arrived and told Teresa to leave before she could respond. Endo and Ito were standing in front of James when he woke up to gunfire outside that evening. Ito claimed that the shots served as a warning to his men, indicating that anyone attempting to flee would face the death penalty. He was content with James' speedy recovery and excited to observe once more the empty hand method James had picked up from his sensei. Ito saw that something significant was approaching and warned that everyone there would perish if calamity struck, despite his inability to comprehend the Navajo signals. James later went back to the barracks, where the inmates gathered to inquire about his health. Beardy relayed fresh news from the radio. According to international agreements, the U.S. military had directed all senior Japanese officers to cease torturing POWs. Allied forces promised prompt action if the order was disregarded and had evidence of misuse. James was uncomfortable. He was concerned that the Japanese may launch a desperate kamikaze attack in retaliation, killing everyone in the camp. He and Gabriel made the decision to check the glider once more to make sure it could still be used for escape, because they were determined to continue forward. To evade the guards, they stayed low and crept through the darkness. As they examined the glider, they were overheard by a neighboring soldier who was peeing. Hiroshi showed up a moment later to look into it. James moved quickly to grab Hiroshi and hold him motionless. James halted Gabriel's attack when he realized Hiroshi might be willing to assist. Their strategy was momentarily derailed when they discovered Collins murdering a guard while they were still searching. Just as Japanese soldiers were entering to count the prisoners, James and Gabriel rushed back to the barracks. The inmates observed Ito's men torturing Collins the following day. Some inmates had escaped from the barracks and attacked the guards throughout the night, it was claimed. He insisted that the guilty come forward. James came forward, took responsibility, and demanded that he be the only one punished. Ito approached and gave James instructions to demonstrate how he killed the guards in order to support his claims. He insisted that James treat another prisoner using the prohibited method. James declined. The prisoner was subsequently slain by Endo. Ito ordered 3 of his warriors to execute Collins after calling them into the battle arena. Before they killed him, Collins gave it his all in battle and gravely wounded the soldiers. It confronted the inmates and threatened to kill anyone who disobeyed camp regulations. He claimed that since only his regulations applied, orders from outside sources to safeguard prisoners of war were meaningless. James was furious and vowed to fight him. "A wise fighter never enters a battle he cannot win," Ito said with a smile. James informed his other soldiers back at the barracks that they needed to put on a show that evening. Beardy suggested using the word "ata," which is a code used by the U.S. military to transmit signals. Gabriel concurred, pointing out that they would only have one opportunity before the Japanese found them. James and Gabriel ascended the hilltop after dark. Over the radio, Gabriel used the word "ata" and got a response. They returned to the barracks after providing their position for an Allied evacuation. There was no one in the barracks. They were overcome by Japanese forces who surged in. When James and Gabriel awoke, they discovered that they were strapped to chairs. After sneaking inside, Teresa and Anna started to release them. According to Teresa, Allied aircraft were already hitting the camp from above. In case James needed it, she gave him a knife. To get the radio, the 4 made their way through the mayhem in silence. They were shooting prisoners mercilessly. James guided them to the tower where the last operational transmitter was located after they discovered the main radio had been damaged. Teresa stopped him from climbing it, insisting that she and Anna divert the guard's attention. The guard was killed after being seduced by Teresa and Anna. After getting the radio back, Gabriel called the U.S. military and asked for a direct C-47 evacuation, stating that flare would be sent to mark their location. James opened fire on Japanese soldiers as he prepared to execute more prisoners, while Gabriel sent the signal, causing chaos in the camp. Gabriel assaulted Endo barehanded out of anger for him, but Collins stopped him before he could kill him. After saving Gabriel and giving him the command to flee, Collins attempted to stab Endo but was shot dead by Japanese forces. Ito waited for James in his barracks while the combat raged. They were facing each other with katanas drawn when James came. Each of them displayed equal skill in a quick and vicious combat. James took the upper hand and almost killed Ito, but Gabriel intervened quickly and dragged him away. Endo pointed his rifle as they sprinted toward the glider as the rescue plane drew closer. Abruptly, Ito intervened to prevent his subordinate from firing at the extraction site. In order for the incoming aircraft to hook the glider's tow cable, they prepped it. To indicate their location, a flare illuminated the sky. An Allied gunship opened fire and cleared the path as Japanese soldiers attempted to halt them. Although many were left behind, James was able to take a number of convicts with him. He secretly pledged to come back for the people who were still in the camp. After then, the tale takes place in 1950. Ito passed away the previous year, James finds out. He is about to depart when Chinook interrupts and requests that he see the illegal technique. James concurs, impressed by Chinook's determination, and they part ways. Chinook demands on seeing the prohibited move even after losing. James, moved by his perseverance, delivers the forceful blow. Chinook offers James the box his father gave him, which contains the medal that formerly belonged to Ito, before the movie closes. To ensure you never miss any updates on new videos, kindly click the bell icon and subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching.